The asteroid mine on Kepler 442b was not a place for the weak. Its tunnels stretched deep into stone that had never seen sunlight, and the air tasted of metal and desperation. Jace Rowan had worked the mines for 3 years, his hands calloused and his back permanently bent from crawling through passages barely wide enough for a human frame. But humans were adaptable. That's what kept them alive on 100 hostile worlds. The Vrexian Empire didn't care much for human comfort. To them, humans were tools, soft-bodied creatures useful only for squeezing into spaces their armored bodies couldn't reach. Jace had learned to keep his head down, do his work, and avoid the Overseer's wrath. That changed the day he found Varric. The predator cub was barely larger than a wolf pup, though its species would grow to nearly 3 meters tall at maturity. Varric's kind, the Keltar, were apex hunters on their homeworld, creatures of pure muscle and razor-sharp claws that could tear through durasteel. But this one was small, abandoned, left to die in the mine's deeper tunnels, where even the Vrexians rarely ventured. Jace found him trapped beneath a collapsed support beam, mewing pitifully, one leg crushed. Any sensible human would have walked away. The Keltar were dangerous, unpredictable. Their adults served as shock troops for the Vrexian military, barely controlled weapons pointed at enemy lines. But Jace had stopped being sensible the day his colony ship was captured. He dug Varric out over the course of 6 hours, using nothing but his hands and a broken mining pick. The cub snapped at him twice, drew blood once, but Jace persisted. When he finally pulled the small creature free, Varric looked up at him with eyes that gleamed like molten copper. Intelligent, aware, grateful. Jace smuggled the cub back to his quarters, a coffin-sized compartment carved into the station's outer ring. He splinted Varric's leg using spare parts from his mining equipment and fed him scraps from his own meager rations. The cub healed slowly, and against all logic, a bond formed between the human and the predator. Varric learned to understand Jace's words, his gestures, his moods, and Jace learned that beneath the fangs and claws was a fierce loyalty that transcended species. 3 months later, when the mine's life support system failed in Section 7, it was Varric who saved Jace's life. The alarm had come too late. Toxic gas flooded the tunnels, and Jace's rebreather cracked under the pressure of falling debris. He stumbled, vision blurring, lungs burning. He would have died there, just another statistic in the Empire's mining reports. But Varric wouldn't allow it. The cub, now nearly adolescent, dragged Jace through 2 kilometers of tunnel, his claws finding purchase on the stone walls, his body shielding Jace from falling rocks. When a section of ceiling collapsed directly above them, Varric threw himself over Jace's body, taking the impact himself. They made it to the safe zone. Jace lived, but Varric's claws, all of them, were shattered, ground down to bloody stumps by the stone and the desperate scramble for survival. The Vrexian medics refused to treat a defective Keltar. They said the cub should be euthanized, that a Keltar without claws was useless, an embarrassment to the species. They gave Jace a choice: surrender Varric for termination or take full responsibility for the creature. Jace chose the latter without hesitation. That night, in his cramped quarters, Jace looked at Varric's ruined paws and made a decision. He was just a human, just a miner with basic technical skills and limited resources. But humans had something the Empire consistently underestimated: ingenuity born of desperation. He started stealing from the mine, small pieces at first: titanium alloy scraps from broken drill bits, servo motors from defunct excavation bots, micro-welding tools from the repair bay. Each theft was a risk. Discovery meant execution. Jace didn't care. For 6 weeks, he worked in secret, using every skill he'd learned in 3 years of forced labor. He studied Keltar anatomy from the station's limited database, calculating load distributions and joint articulation. He fashioned each claw by hand, forging them in a makeshift furnace built from mining equipment, tempering them with coolant stolen from the reactor systems. The steel claws were crude by industrial standards, but they were functional. Each one was fitted with a neural interface salvaged from prosthetic mining equipment, devices meant to help injured workers continue their labor. Jace modified them, adapting human technology to alien biology through trial and error and sheer stubborn determination. When he finally attached the claws to Varric's paws, the cub's eyes widened in recognition. The neural interfaces synced after a moment of calibration, and Varric flexed his new claws experimentally. They gleamed under the harsh station lights, not natural but stronger, sharper, better. Varric looked at Jace with something beyond gratitude. It was understanding, recognition of what this human had sacrificed, the risks he'd taken, the sleepless nights spent forging hope from scrap metal. The cub tested the claws against the wall of Jace's quarters, leaving deep gouges in the metal. Then Varric did something no Keltar had ever done in recorded history. He bowed his head to a human, a gesture of profound respect in his species culture. Word spread through the mine. The other human workers whispered about the man who'd forged claws for a predator. The Vrexian overseers sneered at the foolish human's attachment to a broken animal. But 2 months later, when a mining accident trapped 17 workers, human and Vrexian alike, beneath a collapsed shaft, it was Varric who descended into the unstable wreckage. His steel claws found purchase where natural ones would have failed, each strike precise, each movement calculated. He brought them all out alive. The Vrexian commander, witnessing the rescue, demanded to know who had created the prosthetics. Jace expected execution. Instead, the commander studied Varric's claws with grudging admiration and asked a single question. "Could you make more?" Jace looked at Varric, at the steel claws that caught the light like promises kept, and he smiled. "Yes," he said, "I can make more, because that's what humans did. They adapted, they innovated. They took broken things and made them stronger than before. Not through superior strength or natural weapons, but through loyalty, ingenuity, and the stubborn refusal to accept that anything, or anyone, was beyond saving." Varric pressed his shoulder against Jace's leg, a gesture of solidarity. And in that moment, the human and the predator stood together. Proof that sometimes the greatest strength isn't what you're born with. It's what you forge with your own 2 hands.